and welcome to our final webinar from the 6-part web series. I'm Jochen Schleese, and today I'd like to introduce you to Julia Alebrand. Hello, Julia.
Hi, Jochen. How are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I would like you to quick explain to our viewers and everybody who's listened to the webinar who you are and why you do what you do.
Absolutely. My name is Julia Alebrand. I am with Saddlefit for Life as an educator and a student support instructor. And I was introduced to Saddlefit for Life during my undergraduate degree at the University of Guelph, where I studied equine science. And at the time, I was struggling with some saddlefit issues with my own horse. I had a young mare, a young Trakehner mare, very spirited, and we were experiencing some problems, behavioral problems specifically under saddle. She would, after every jump, she would take off bucking, and I x-rayed her top to bottom. We had many vets and trainers and body workers work with us to figure out what's going on. And it wasn't until I saw one of your presentations, Jochen, that I made that connection to these behavioral problems being related to saddlefit. So thanks to Saddlefit for Life, I was able to get to the root of these behavioral problems and resolve them, which resulted in me being extremely passionate about equine anatomy and biomechanics and wanting to play an active role in promoting this education and in carrying Saddlefit for Life's mission out into the world. So I'm super excited to be here today because I understand that our viewers have just seen a great web series that you put together, and we have our final video today where we're going to be answering some of those most commonly asked questions. So really excited to get into it with you today.
Yes, thank you for sharing this. So, without further ado, after we had these 6 parts web series, where the first one was about on the 8 common fits and the rider's pain, and then we had the the pain and injury in the horse. Then we had the mapping out the horse. Then I talked about the dynamic assessment and static assessment, dust pattern analysis, and I talked about saddle pads and shifts. So here are the most common questions. Julia, take it away and let's start with this program.
Absolutely. So the first big question is that why are ill-fitting saddles still so common despite the proliferation of published research? I mean, we just talked about it briefly. There's so much evidence-based education and knowledge out there. If you've watched all of the parts of the web series, you know how much information and research we do have on saddle fit. So how come we're still seeing ill-fitting saddles, from beginner riders to the Olympians? We are seeing saddle fit issues in some of these horses and some of these riders. So why is that, Jochen?
Julia, I think a big part is, if I have some props here, what I would like to show, some of us, I don't know if you can see it yet, here we go. Some of us have put together this calls the see-through horse, and you can put it all together. You have an idea where the shoulder blade is, the ribs, the lumbers, so you get a pretty good idea. And sometimes you see books and you say, oh, yes, I understand. But having actually a model, even little models like that, and understanding how deep certain tissues and areas are is quite amazing when you hold it in your hands. But when the day-to-day comes, and I would like to have how I'll put it, the opinion of other people or professionals. And I think problem is that it is not a regulated trade. You can be a saddle fitter in a 2-day course and then you become a saddle fitter. I think it's so much information because a lot of people have opinions. I think that's where it starts, with not following the logical approach. Like I just showed you that horse. When you look at it, you kind of right away see, wouldn't it make sense to put the saddle on the most stable and strongest area rather than on spots where it really hurts the horse? Like in my first webinar, I talk about the 8 common saddle fitting myths. So it is partially because of different reasons what people choose. If I would like my horse to go hollow for the sport I choose, then I fit the saddle so the horse gets inverted. Okay, so I use a tool to make the horse hollow. where a person who may have the desire of making the horse round says, well, this is absolutely wrong. So you can see, depends on what sport you are, completely misunderstanding. Right?
Right.
But if you want to say, what is the proper fit? It depends who you ask. If you ask a horse, there's only one. Only one. It's one where you don't hurt the horse and cause long-term damage to the horse. Okay? By putting the contact on areas what doesn't hurt. By simple measurements. And many, many, many people measure horses, I know, but they don't even take a level. If you don't have a bare minimum, here I got a phone. This is for free. See, I can move this around. See, I can enlarge this. Every rider can use this app and measure the horse's back and ship it worldwide, whoever saddle fitter. So we have a lot of people who claim they can make the horse level or even. And then you trust and give them all the money. And after 2-3 months, they get the horse back. The horse, it's even apparently. See, now I can take a picture of my level to measure. So now it says, but I just paid you a lot of money for those 3 to 6 months training. You're still crooked.
Yeah.
So, and then we have, of course, a lot of people who have no means in terms of they live in a country where they're not allowed to import the proper tools or allow the proper saddles were already a little bit advanced. Let's think about it. 365 different companies for English saddles and Western saddles and specialty saddles. And only 65 of those companies have saddles you can actually adjust to what the veterinarians and the horse and the research shows today. Right? Of course, when I am in a country where I'm not allowed to use technology or level or don't have the fingertips to one of those 65 saddle companies, and I only have fit those 300 saddles, which cannot be fitted to what my veterinarian, osteopath, veterinarian, physiotherapist, vet trainer, or even I need, then I fit what I have. And it makes me absolutely mad when I hear from fitters who say, I have to fit something, I have to make a living. So I'm saying to them, you actually know what you fit is bad for the horse, and you do it anyway because you say, I have to make a living? See, Julia, that's where I think the big problem starts. The child, the adult amateur rider, the person who has a horse, the hard horse, trusted to a so-called expert. If he has the 2-hour training, the 4 hours, the 2 years, the 5-year training to become a professional saddle fitter, only to hear that the person actually says, I have to make a living somehow. Right? My goal is always to have everybody worldwide to give a chance, have an equine ergonomist, tell them what the rider and the horse needs, and let the customer then choose what product I want to source from what country, from what saddle maker, anywhere in the world.
Right.
As long as we get brainwashed, as long as we get false information, I think that's why we see this incredible amount of suffering horses, because the fitters don't follow the philosophy what is based on science and anatomy and physiology of the horse and rider.
And that goes back to the lack of regulation, right? That's the overarching theme, is that we have a lack of regulation when it comes to manufacturing saddles and when it comes to educating saddle fitting professionals. Because I think a lot of people are out there with very well-intended advice, but they lack the necessary knowledge of equine anatomy and biomechanics to actually select the right product. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the accessibility of, a good saddle that can fit anatomically correctly is also a problem. But if we had better regulation in the saddle fitting industry globally, then we likely wouldn't have so many products that go against equine anatomy altogether when we think about short tree points or really narrow gullet channels, for example.
Yeah, I mean, the beautiful part is with technology, we are not standing anymore on mountain hills and signal each other with smoke signals. Maybe some part of the world, they still do it. We have technology like cell phones. And how cool is the cell phone I just showed you? You know,
it's incredible.
everybody can use that. Every baby, every kid, anybody who has ability to get your fingers on a cell phone, you had accurate measurements. I mean, where in the world it never happened before. And then now we have, because of Saddlefit for Life, giving the offer that everybody can really evaluate if their fitter is doing a good job for themselves or for the rider, which brings us to the next questions.
So, second question, why do so many saddle fitters still only fit the horse and not the rider? So why don't they measure the rider when they fit the saddle to the horse? And I think this is a really great question because we often hear this, don't we, in the field, Jochen, when we work with riders, that they say, I just want my horse to be comfortable. I'm able to ride in whatever saddle. It doesn't matter as long as my horse is comfortable. And a lot of fitters will follow that notion and will just fit the saddle to the horse and completely neglect the fact that it needs to fit the rider as well. So why is that?
I think it started off, riding used to be a very macho thing. Today, not so much anymore. And we also need to understand that saddles were made by men for thousands and thousands of years. It wasn't until 1979 that the majority of the rider became the women.
Yeah.
So now we have 95% of all English riders are women and 75% of all Western riders are women. So today, yes, there is the odd one or the other girl who makes saddles, but the majority of the guys make saddles. And saddle making is an art, but also you work with your hands and with measurements, right? But you form the seat. And I remember this, doesn't matter when I learned how to make Western saddles or English saddles, when you form your seat, you look at it and sometimes you sit on it if anything hurts you or bites you. Now, needless to say that I will never, or any guy who is a saddle maker who sits on the saddle and feels everything feels good, will never feel what a woman feels in the saddle. Let me give more directly, in the crotch. Okay, because our crotch looks different than a woman's crotch, full stop. And yet we have experts, so-called experts, who say, oh, there's no difference between a man and a woman's crotch or pelvis, or there's so many different pelvis changes. I can only tell you my story. When my student came back to me, and I already made over 6,000 saddles at that stage, came back to me and says, you need to speak to my gynecologist because every saddle I ride, is it your saddle? If it's a saddle I buy from Europe, from England, from whoever, it hurts me. My gynecologist says I have to stop riding, which I won't because this is my profession. I ride for Canada. I was too embarrassed. So the gynecologist come to me. What did he do? He showed me two things. One, a male and a female pelvis, two pelvises. Okay? First look, they look the same. And then he said, you need to take, like a dentist, a mold of the rider's seat. So you, as the saddle maker, really clearly see and feel how a woman fits in the saddle. Now, first I looked at him like this guy had like 4 eyes. He looked at me, what did you just say? How am I going to take a mold of a rider's butt? So anyway, we figured it out. We took a mold. We took two identical riders, looked the same height, and he took a mold. I took a mold of myself. I took a mold from my wife. And then I remember that when I was sponsored, all my friends and all my students had to ride in the saddle. I told them so because I was paid as a trainer to convince my students to ride the saddle I got sponsored in. Okay, we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s here. So when I sat in the mold for my wife, that was the most uncomfortable, horrible feel ever. For the first time, I could relate what 95% of most women riders who ride in a male saddle feel. But if you're a little girl and you don't know different, I mean, Julia, maybe you can explain it. If you don't know different, you think, okay, that's part of riding. I guess I got to deform and mold myself around this uncomfortable thing called saddle, right? Then you don't know. How did you find?
Yeah, I actually do have a personal experience with that. I've been riding since I was little. I started when I was 5 years old. So I grew up in saddles essentially. And you can't see me from the waist down, but I have wider hips and I have some groceries on my legs. So I'm not built like a tall, lanky male rider who many of these saddles used to be built for. So I didn't realize that being uncomfortable during or after riding was not normal. That was just part of my riding experience, especially during puberty and once I became a young adult. And it wasn't until I rode in a female saddle that I realized that I had been fighting my equipment, and I don't even want to think about the damage that I caused to some of these horses that I rode like this. So it is a really important piece of the puzzle. And some of these recurring positional issues, like I always had my knees pointed out and my toes pointed out, and my trainer would just yell from the arena through the entire arena every single lesson to get my toes forward and my knees forward. And I tried and tried and tried, and I couldn't. And as soon as I rode in the appropriate saddle, my position fell into place. I mean, I still have things to work on today, but it's incredible how big of a difference it makes when you're in an appropriate saddle.
Without pain.
Yes,
Right?
and without pain, especially.
So
Yeah.
what brings me back to the original question. Why do so many saddle fitters still don't fit the horse and rider? Because the first thing I thought as a manufacturer and saddle fitter, when I realized how different it is, I thought about this, money. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, now I need twice as many saddles as I have before. And most of the time when you're in trade, it's not like you're changing stocks and make thousands and thousands of dollars in profits. Okay. So now it was overwhelming for me, and I was thinking, how am I going to do it? And I can see how many saddle fitters going to say, how many more saddles am I going to schlep around? And the same with the manufacturers. It says, what am I going to build, a male or a female saddle? They're absolutely boycotted because it costs a lot of money. I, on the other hand, turned around and says, will I want to sell one saddle out of 10 customers to a guy, or do I want to sell 9 saddles out of 10 to women? So obviously,
Yes.
instead of storing 10 male saddles, I stored 9 female saddle and 1 male saddle. So that's up to each individual manufacturer and saddle fitters, but you cannot train pain. You cannot change the fact that guys don't have a birth channel, full stop. I don't care how much your sugar coat is and how sweet talk it. And why do so many riders, fitters don't measure the riders? Because they don't have the education. Because many saddle fitting schools don't teach this. And yet there's over 35 books from biomechanic professors who specialize on how a body of a human works on an animal. I mean, it's all there. Like back to our original question, how come so much ill-fitting stuff exists while the information is there? I strongly believe people do this because they don't know what they don't know. You heard that saying before, right, Julia?
Yes, I certainly do. So what makes Saddle Fit for Life the pinnacle of saddle fit education? We talked about the different saddle fitting schools that are out there. What is it that sets Saddle Fit for Life apart from all the other schools?
Well, to tell you the truth, this is quite a bold statement to say this about yourself, but I actually adopted from students. It was this French guy who was from Paris, and he says, I've been to the saddle fitting school in Holland. I've been to 2 saddle fitting schools in England. And what I learned there, it's a fraction of what I learned here in only 3 days. You guys are really the pinnacle of saddle fitting school. I had to look up what that even meant, pinnacle. So a couple of years later, I get to hear this numerous times more. And I thought, okay, what makes Saddle Fit for Life so different? We're completely independent. You can say, wow, you're Jochen Schleese, you sell a company, Schleese Saddles. We make 800 saddles in North America, and there's 19 million horses in North America. If I really want to try fill all the horses, how in the world am I going to do it? I cannot help the horses if I can't provide everybody a service to help them with their existing saddle or with a saddle. So obviously, it's a sheer number thing. So how can I? Then you can say, why would you give all the freedom away, secret away? Well, if you ever helped an abused horse or you help a person who's massively in pain, the reward from the horses and from the rider, not money, the reward you feel, the thanks you feel from the horse and the rider is the biggest dopamine you've ever felt. Going through this rush, Julia, you have done this many times. Okay? And that is what I wanted to share and give many horses and people who are dedicated to help other horses and riders as well. In order to do it, I can only do one thing, what my master told me when I was learning how to ride. My master says, it is the rider's duty to teach his friends and his students what he learned from his masters, because it takes 6 human life to learn how to ride properly. Only by sharing what you learn and teaching what you learned will you ever be fair to the animal. And I took that very literally. And everything I learned as a master saddler, as an equine ergonomist, as a saddle ergonomist, what I learned from professors for horses or humans, we put in this school. Not only do, like Julie already mentioned, we teach specialty saddle fit, from racing saddles to all kinds of different saddles, from all kinds of Western saddles and English saddles. We also keep it completely product independent, as I said, but mainly follow the law of nature, science, and the rule from the oldest riding school: fit the rider first. If you can't fit the rider, what's the point of stuffing panels? And I think that's why many, many, many students give us the honorable title, Pinnacle of Saddle Fitting Education.
For more free educational content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Or if you're interested in furthering your education beyond free content, we'd love to chat with you. You can book a call with one of our instructors to learn more about our courses. We offer evidence-based saddle fit education that is online and self-paced, so you can fit it to your own schedule. And we have different courses both for horse owners and riders, as well as for equine professionals, and continuing professional development credit for veterinarians as well. I can't wait to see you in the next video, or maybe even welcome you to the Saddle Fit for Life Academy permanently.